Ah, that's great. All right, so it was a setting here that was fiddled with, but yeah, welcome. Welcome, good to speak to you again. And we are ready
Indeed it is.
for the match here between Kezz and Racerlight. How are you doing?
Pretty good, actually. Hoping
Great.
to see a bounce back after the unfortunate conclusion to the semi-final matches. Hoping
Exactly.
to see a very high level of performance and, give us something nice leading into the finals.
Yeah, it would be great to see here today. Yeah, Racerlight and Kezz. Of course, interesting that we see Racerlight here, Storm moving on to the final. That will actually be played on Tuesday, I think. So, a little bit of a surprise for me, but we'll see the final happening on Tuesday, Dopamine and Storm. But now first, Racerlight and Kezz, I think just getting warmed up here, and we'll see when we are ready to go. And as you said, looking forward to high level of play, competitiveness. Very nice to see Kezz here actually, because I think last time he left and he said, I don't want to play anymore, but he is here, so that's very, very good. And we gotta watch some NASCAR action once again.
Indeed it is. Personally, I do understand his tilt after all, considering where he was standing in that match against Dopamine. He was even better than in his first round match, and if he had just performed up to his usual level, if he had repeated what he had already done in this year's tournament, he could have been the one not just competing in the final, but the hands-on favorite to win the final.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
And lift his first trophy, I believe, and deny Dopamine a third consecutive one. But now, as it stands, the matchups have shaken up in a way that we could never really seen coming.
Yeah.
For both players, it's actually decently unfortunate. Kezz would have wanted to be in the final because he was, for certain parts of that semi-final match, the best player on the server, even better than Dopamine in some instances.
Yeah, agreed.
And for Racerlight, it's going to feel pretty disappointing because this is the easiest semi-final he's had in years, but yet again, he has to settle for a top 4 finish. Not that that's bad by any means. Far from it, but I think he would have felt that this year the level of competition at the very top was a little bit lower than usual, and that might have been his cue to secure that final spot after a very, very long time of finishing top 4, but not to be. He will try to get the third place here today.
Yeah.
Only one warm-up now, and we start with the map that ended it all last time, which is NASCAR Around the World by Happy, where the identifying elements are really these sausage curves, but it is a bit more standard than maybe some of his previous maps. Other than those elements, nothing really out of the ordinary. That being said, clearly a map where the level of competition is not as close as in typical flab maps, for instance. Dopamine broke off to a very convincing lead in endurance here, so... Remains to be seen how the players are going to change up their approach to the map now that they only have to complete 2 laps every time instead of 3.
Yeah, that will be very interesting to see. So here we go. First round for Racer and Kezz.
Indeed we do. So the third place match gets underway, and really no big break should be forthcoming until the second part of the first lap. There's just nothing in the intro that really affects you in any significant way heading now into these sausage curbs. They're just on a straight line, but still there is a small difference in speed depending on how you take them. Maybe it decides rounds, hopefully not though. The 2 players dead even now heading into the second part of the lap. Racerlight breaking off to a bit of a lead, but Kezz with a much better exit out of that turn and into the banked 180 will take the lead heading into lap 2. About a 1/10 of a second the advantage for him. Not a whole lot to go on, but in top level play, the smallest differences usually end up mattering much more. Yeah. Still about a 1/10 of a second, trying to get that left-hander on time, not have to enter the sausage curbs in a risky way. Racerlight almost touching the wall.
Yeah, close.
Too late, I think, on the release heading into that corner will now increase his deficit to about 2/10 of a second. Bit of a suboptimal release there as well, although he might have gotten a bit of a better entry. About 2/10 of a second of difference, but Kezz looks to close out the first round very easily.
Well done.
1:14.09, 1:14.28 for Racerlight. A high-level round from both players, but Kezz in the end cleaner when it matters. The fine details decide it.
Yeah, well done by Kezz here to take the first point, and will be interesting to see if Kezz can actually take that level that he put up against Dopamine in the first couple of maps that we saw last time in the semis, and fight Racerlight with it here. And Kezz taking the first point is a good sign for him, I think.
It is, but he has been prone to, you know, getting about 2 or 3 points and then just having a 5 to 6 round drought of bad flow and consistency. So
yeah,
hopefully wants to work on that if he wants to put this one to bed early. Pretty even between the two players here. And interesting thing to note, of course, there is no map pack change for the finals. So Kezz's pace against maybe Storm and Dopamine's pace would be interesting to see how the actual small final compares to the grand final.
Yeah, that's true.
That's something we will be able to compare. This time Racerlight with the lead, about a 1/10 of a second, the advantage heading into lap 2, trying to equalize early on, not let Kezz get that early foothold he's been able to get against almost every other player this Primetime Cup. However, in the Sausage Curbs, looks like some equalizing effort from Kezz to release an edge here. Very good, will have the advantage, but Racerlight's exit speed is very good, and so is the line. That is very smooth and great indeed. Takes the lead into the banked corner, should be able to close out that round with a phenomenal exit, and he does.
Wow.
Does Kezz one better, beats his time, sets the first 1:13, 1:13.96. Kezz 1:4.11, only 0.03 of a second slower than last time, but this time Racerlight is the one taking the lead. 1-1 now.
Great.
2 rounds in.
There we go. So 1-1, and more 130s on the way, you think? 113s, I should say. We looking for that, or?
I think it can be expected, but 1:14 is just a very, very clean round.
Yeah.
1:14.1 is about, I think, par level. We'll see, though. Maybe the players kind of warm up or cool down later into the map. It really varies from matchup to matchup. Racerlight again with the small lead. This is something he used to be famous for, just getting a couple of hundredths of a second very early on by being very precise in the lines that other players normally don't pay much attention to. Does reward him. He is 0.03 of a second ahead heading into lap 2. Basically no amount of difference, but he has a better entry into that first corner, and Kezz touches the wall. First major mistake. He was coming in with more speed, so it would have been beneficial for him if he was able to make it happen. But again, those sausage curbs do force you into the wall just slightly, and if you're careless, tap left, it might be enough to send you hurtling towards the wall, and Racerlight will secure a second round unopposed. What remains to be seen is his time, just to see if he's going to maintain that high level.
Let's see.
Looks to be a 1:13.83, even faster than last time through the finish line, so kick the pace up a notch. Kezz without a 1:13 yet, perhaps could have followed him to 1 if he didn't crash, but Racerlight takes a 2-1 lead after Kezz scores the first point, immediately putting things back in order.
There you go.
3 rounds to go. We're halfway through map 1 here. Racerlight looking much more consistent than he was before.
Yeah, I
Not
just
to
wanted
say
to
he
say
was
that.
Not to say he was inconsistent in his semifinals, but his pace was off, and no longer seems to be the case.
Nice.
Although, to be fair, I'm sure he is feeling a bit miffed that the small final is harder than the semifinal.
Yeah, exactly. It is what we talked about. Kezz, of course, very strong opponent for Racerlight here, but...
And in this particular corner, just the way you enter it decides so much of your ending, and this time both players get it right, but in one round Racerlight was able to secure a huge advantage over Kezz by taking that one cleaner, so that is a key corner to pay attention to. This time the entry much better. Kezz this time avoids the wall, releases a bit early though. He has to. He was traveling very quickly and he couldn't carry that much speed through the complex, which means Racerlight will take the lead. Has Kezz touched the wall? Looks like he has. Second consecutive mistake in the sausage curb identities. Not exactly what he was hoping for, but this is a rather unorthodox map because of the sausage curbs as it was. May still confuse some players. This is the first tournament we're playing on this game. Racerlight again, even faster by 0.02 of a second, 1:13.806. 4 rounds in a row where he just went faster and faster each time.
Can he keep it up? Slow down,
himself telling him to slow down. Racerlight takes a 3-1 lead, and this kind of performance is truly worthy of a grand final, honestly. So Racerlight, he's been in quite a few third-place matches so far, so I guess he feels right at home playing for that bronze medal, and he's definitely looking to secure it, cement his status as a driver that is extremely accomplished, extremely consistent year after year, game after game, and he's showing that in map number 1. Round number 5 underway. This time Kezz breaks out to about a tenth of a second lead. Looks like he has a clean wrench as well. Racerlight will touch the wall. He had a bad exit out of the previous 270, and this time he misjudges because of that. Racerlight making that first mistake, of course, only his first. Kezz has made 2 so far, but
important one here. Kezz
only has a second the advantage, so he can't afford to actually make a full-blown mistake. Racerlight didn't make a severe one like Kezz did, so he still does need to finish the round.
Yeah.
However, with his lead increasing, you have to think he'll be able to do that. Question is whether Kezz will finally put a 113 on the board, show that it was just a temporary dip in form, and that he can equalize. He will equalize. Looking at his time through the finish line, it is 1:13.66, the fastest time by, what, 10th of a second.
Whew. That is some performance there from Kezz. Good for his mentality, I think, to put that one on the board. Very strong time.
Final round now of the map. Racerlight reads 3-2, but of course Kezz demonstrating right now that form is temporary, but class is eternal. And he just sets the kind of times we know he will, and will be very interesting. I'm not exactly sure if the finals will be played in the same map order as the small final. I think it should, which means we'll also have direct time comparisons. So 1:13.6 clearly and 1:13.8 possible times if you're drawing very cleanly.
Yeah.
Final round, Racerlight again so close to the wall, but this time he is rewarded for that risk. Does not lose any time to Kezz, despite Kezz having a basically optimal line. However, he still trails heading into lap 2. He does have a little bit more speed, so only 0.04 of a second separating the 2 players heading into lap 2. First corner, this is where a lot of things happen. Racerlight did not have a clean entry line. He didn't go wide enough. This meant that he had to release additionally at the turn in, which means he's a 1/4 of a second behind. Has to basically rely on a mistake from Kezz rather than actual quick driving to recover at this point. 0.2 of a second might not seem like much, but when it's only 2 laps between top players, that might be the decider. However, Racerlight making up a lot of time. That was a bit of a wobbly corner entry from Kezz. What is this? Racerlight completing the overtake. He just completely drops the ball on pace. And I think Racerlight might reach the finish line first.
Holy moly, what an overtake there from Racerlight. Wow. Insane last turn. Well done.
This was on pace actually for another 1:13.6, but he just completely drops the ball in pace. Second lap. Racerlight takes 4-2 the advantage after first map. So could have actually been in favor of Kezz. The fastest round in absolute terms, 1:13.6 by Kezz, but Racerlight just more consistent, and in the end takes away Kezz's equalizing point to maintain a 2-point advantage heading into the second round's map.
Well done.
Very decent indeed from him, so we'll be happy that his consistency saved the day, but there is still an absolute pace difference in favor of Kezz, which if he manages to, you know, get things sorted in terms of consistency, Racerlight might still suffer a bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Second map, the Go Saints Spaß, Tsunami's map. It was played in time attack. We saw a beautiful 1-lap replay by Dopaminer last time around, but this time it's played in rounds, and this completely changes the way you want to approach, because this time you no longer have the luxury of aggressively pursuing the optimal line and just saying, what if I crash? I have 8 minutes.
Yeah.
This time you have to complete 3 laps with that interesting... it's just very hard to actually keep it in bounds. Racerlight demonstrates that. That was actually very close. The reason why, first things first, the first turn goes into that blind additional curving corner. Then you have to keep it close enough for the left-right sequence heading into the 270. The entry is narrow, and so is the exit. And of course, the final corner before the finish line, again, very tight. So timing is crucial. This is a test of pure timing knowledge. If NASCAR is the art of the release, then this map is a graduation exam of the highest caliber.
Very true.
And with 3 laps instead of 2, players will have to navigate this 3 times. This means many more opportunities to just get a huge advantage by driving the corner better than your opponent who had to release. And nothing to be said. This is just a pure test of skill, a pure test of consistency. No luck to it, no shenanigans involved, and the better player will win. Kezz definitely hoping to trim the deficit down to equalize heading into time attack, because that's where he normally expects to take the advantage. He was better in time attack than Racerlight was last time around, so If
Yeah.
he goes into it, equalizes heading into it, it's gonna be much better for him. Kezz just laxing with the warm-up, unaware that Racerlight is finished. But yeah, this map is, I think, one of my surprising favorites in the finals map pack, just because of how challenging it is, just because of how high the level of execution needs to be to completely master the map. We saw that in Dopamine's clip. You can see it on Rema's channel, I believe, and you can see it on YouTube too. So look at that if you've missed it by some chance. It is one of the best ones we've seen all cup long, honestly, one of the most clip-worthy moments. Not the first world record Dopamine has set alive on track. That happened in Winner's Bracket Round 2 on Bloodstorm by Ronick. You should also check that one out. So the second warm-up, and again, one interesting thing to note, this first corner, just how difficult it is to have that blind additional turn. You can't really... NASCAR and Trackmania United forever has been pretty much mapped out, right? You don't have the same liberty in designing complex lines because of the Rammsteins in the way, and because there's just not as many blocks. You can't really make custom flat turns. And after a while, you get muscle memory and you can basically just drive maps visually, even without really memorizing the timings. You can just figure out, yeah, I've seen that corner before, I know how to approach it. Trackmania 2020 just throws that all into the bin, and this map in particular has almost every single corner be some kind of custom complex type, only possible here. Making that 270 entrance, if Rammsteins were still present, would be absolutely impossible. So this is an example of what modern mapping can unravel. It is an example of a very high quality modern map.
Yeah, it will be very fun to watch again. As you said, some technical interesting things here on this map. So let's see if as the players actually start out, I want to point something out. Racerlight, the time he just set on that final lap was faster than his time in time attack in the semifinal. Wow.
Not by much, but it was. So it was a 27.7. Dopamine's incredible lap was 27.4. Kezz managed to do a 28.5 high. And Racerlight already demonstrating just how much one cleaner entry, one perfect line can put you ahead of your opponent. It's a quarter of a second in 1 out of 3 laps in one corner complex out of many. 0.3 of a second lead heading into the end of lap 1. Let's see if the blind turn gives us any surprises. Racerlight, beautiful line. Maintains the lead completely, even though Kezz drove it well. Kezz, that's a wide line. I don't think he'll be able to make the corner optimally, and Racerlight indeed, he bleeds a lot of time. Look at that!
Has to respawn here, Racer.
And does have to respawn, and that's exactly what the problem is. You decide the entry angle. Without the Rammsteins absent, you decide the entry angle. You have to change from the right-hander to the left-hander in the lead up to the 270, and if you mess up your flow here, that mistake propagates all the way for the corner. So right here, if you don't change turning direction in time, if you take this corner badly, you're not going to be able to make the entry. If you can't make the entry, you can't make the 270. Your flow is permanently ruined from making one corner mistake. It just goes all the way through. So you have to maintain the absolute highest level to actually keep it in bounds on this map. If you drive poorly, you're going to have to release constantly. Or you crash, like what happened to Racerlight. Kezz scores his 3rd point. It's now 4-3 in favor of Racerlight. 128.4. Remains to be seen if that is a very good time or just average for their level, of course. Racerlight, as you can see, he was a lot cleaner heading into lap 1. That's traditionally been a strength of Racerlight. Not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of him as a player, but it always comes to mind. He always gets to a lead early. He's always the one driving these early corners very well. He's always the one who has about a 10th or 2 of a second to you before the actual NASCAR techniques have even started, and then he's also very, very good at them. And he showed that in lap number 1. The problem is it got out of hand because carrying a lot of speed, your timing must be picture perfect. The window that you have to make the turn decreases the faster you go, of course, which makes it just all the harder. So the higher level you need to drive this kind of map on, the harder it gets. Exactly what you want to see out of a finals map pack. This time Kezz with the lead. However, I think it was a bit of a wobbly entry. Can he actually manage it on time? Yes, he does, and barely avoids the entry. Almost nothing separating these two players, but again, Kezz's flow was a bit weaker, which means Racerlight will complete the overtake, but he touches the wall at the end of the 270.
Racerlight, so again with a hit there, and
that's
Kezz.
exactly is
Running
exactly
away.
what I've been pointing out.
Yeah.
The faster you go, the harder it becomes. The window you have to make the turn, to change your turning direction, decreases. And like I said, NASCAR is the art of the release. And this shows you just exactly why this is just as hard as any other Trackmania discipline. You might think, well, we don't have any sliding techniques. Surely that's harder to execute than just releasing the throttle. NASCAR would like to have a word about that. Kezz completes the round 7/10 of a second faster than the previous
There you
one.
go.
127.7, 128.8 for Racerlight. Even with that one mistake, Kezz equalizes 4-4 between the two players, and Racerlight, this time he's the one displaying inconsistency. However, this map just so difficult, you can't really blame him for it. After all, it doesn't matter if you make it safely to the finish line if your pace is a 128 or a 129, so
Yeah.
might as well
That's very
risk it for the biscuit. Otherwise, you don't even stand a chance of winning the round. You're just going to lose by default. Racerlight this time with a bad early flow. Not often you see that from him. The advantage for Kezz will be about 0.2 of a second heading into the first 270. Still, however, there is time for Racerlight to turn that back. And as you can see, the exit of that 270 very wide for him. He risks it all there. Look at how risky that line is, but the risk is rewarded. He keeps it in bounds, and the deficit that he had has almost completely been erased. Now into that, I guess you can call it the identity of this map, and I think Racerlight has a pretty good line. Unfortunately, Kezz does him one better, and Racerlight has a bit of an unfortunate release. That's a wide line, which means he's going to have a wide exit. I don't think it's going to end up all that well for him. Avoids the wall, but does not gain any time, and Kezz is again a 1/10.5 of a second in the lead, heading into lap 3. However, Racerlight again making up some time. Blind right, blind left-hander. First corner, Kezz maintaining about a 1/10 of a second to lead. Racerlight, despite his best efforts, just can't keep it together for more than a few corners at a time before releasing again and dropping the time that he gains back. As I think has a significant lead. Racerlight slightly better in the 270, but it shouldn't matter because the deficit is just too high. 0.2 of a second, final corner. Surely Kezz doesn't make a significant mistake here. He doesn't. He does drop a little bit of time, but finishes first. 127.9, 128.0 for Racerlight, and Kezz takes the lead with 3 consecutive rounds, 5-4 for the French driver.
Very, very nicely done by Kezz. Even though Racerlight with that breathe down his neck, he keeps it in pace there and takes the 3rd point. Very well done by Kezz. Let's see if he can keep it up.
And it should be noted, Racerlight demonstrates exactly that. You might think, well, why am I saying that he drops time even though he didn't make any material mistakes? Well, that's exactly the point. Every time he gained back those 0.2 of a second, he immediately had to release because his flow was ruined somewhere else. There is really just one racing line throughout this map, and the player that is closer to it will be the winning player, regardless of how you feel about it. Again, Racerlight making up a severe deficit in the first couple of quarters, cutting it so close to the wall and that blind left-hander, but does manage to avoid the wall. Kezz again in a lead, but it's no lead to speak of, only half a 1/10 of a second. A couple of hundreds really separating these two players. I think Racerlight might have a better entry indeed. Kezz didn't turn in on time, which compromised his racing line, and again comes true. Racerlight now with a 1/10 of a second the advantage heading into the final lap. However, Kezz makes it up again because his racing line was better coming out of the 270. Blind left-hander cutting it so close to the wall, but Kezz has optimal flow. Let's see what happens in lap number 3. Which one of them has the advantage? Kezz, however, has a significant buffer, enjoys a 1/10.5 of a second the advantage, and he has to release because he didn't make it on time. And that'll be a 6th point for Kezz, the 4th consecutive round. Racerlight not finding racing line on this challenging track. I'm so glad they put it in rounds mode. Kezz another 127.7, Racerlight far behind, and this time after a 2-point deficit, Kezz is now at a 2-point lead, 6-4.
There you go. Kezz doing very good here, looking to actually 6-0 Racerlight on this map. And he's showing Kezz some consistency here, and I'm very impressed by the times that he's driving, and Racerlight just can't make it happen right now for himself.
And to be fair, again, Racerlight is between a rock and a hard place. Kezz touches the wall, however, that is an early mistake, and that is the second early mistake. I think this round is done and dusted before it begins. Very uncharacteristic mistake after 4 very clean rounds, dare I say. Of course, not out of the question that Racerlight makes a mistake, but once he sees the scoreboard, he's going to be clued in on what's going on, and he's going to slow down and just drive it safely.
No. He hits the wall. Racerlight, the slowdown.
However, I do believe he still has time, and Kezz touches the wall on the blind left-hander again. Noticing that he made up time, he went aggressively into that corner to try and make up a bit of time, but it punishes him, and Racerlight regains the lead. Should be around But what I wanted to say is, although it might seem that Racerlight is making just a lot of mistakes, he is between a rock and a hard place. If you don't risk it, if you just drive safely, did Racerlight?
Yeah, he touched again, just very slightly.
This time, however, Kezz is a lot closer to him. However, again, he touches on the blind left-hander again. Over-aggression is repeatedly punished, and players just making repeated mistakes. I'm really glad they put this map in rounds mode, because it is such a test of skill.
Yeah.
And this time, however, nerves getting to both of the players. I know Racerlight must be feeling nervous after dropping 4 consecutive rounds when it matters most. However, I do think he will close it out despite repeated mistakes. However, 130.71, not exactly a round to be proud of.
Wow.
6-5 then for Kezz heading into the final round. Racerlight with a chance to make it all even heading into time attack. Kezz with a chance to come out to a 2-point lead heading in. But as the final round commences, what I wanted to say is, if you drive safely as Racerlight, sure, you might be crashing less, but then you just won't have the pace to ever be in contention to win the round in the first place. So I do prefer what he's doing right now, just risking it and eventually crashing. That is a winner's mentality, even though it might not be very entertaining to a spectator, of course. Doesn't really match realistic motorsports, but then again, this is a game, it does behave a little bit differently, and you have to give it all, even if it does cost you the round. And this time, Racerlight giving his all is rewarded. He has a good chance to equalize leads by 1/10 of a second. This time, both players much more measured and controlled on that blind left-hander to lead into lap number 2, and Kezz is not cutting into his lead whatsoever. Heading into the identity. Kezz went too deep. He'll touch the wall at the entry. No, he doesn't, but he'll compromise his flow. One mistake or another. There was a mistake coming as soon as he assumed that line, and that is the beauty of this map. Barely avoids the wall on the exit as well. However, Racerlight was not able to significantly benefit from that mistake. Only leads by 2/10 of a second. Heading into lap number 3, however, Racerlight's first corner is very clean, and Kezz, again, his flow is a little bit off. Not by much, but enough to increase Racerlight's lead, and again, Kezz will not be able to make that 270 without releasing. He makes it, but just as I said, he releases, and he's not able to make up time compared to Racerlight. Racerlight should be able to just ride this one out to the finish and secure a complete equalizing point. Driving it safely at the very end. Kezz is risking it, but he's not going to be rewarded. 127.8. Racerlight is an equalizing 6 point. We're dead even.
Yeah, 6-6. So going into time attack, nothing separates these players, and I think that's very good for us. Excitement on the way.
It is very good for us, but I dare say it's not very good for Racerlight, considering just how many mistakes Kezz made on that very first map, and considering that he also, you know, just donated him around on this one. If Racerlight was just able to secure a round on 2 on actual merit, he would have really enjoyed a significant advantage, and you feel like he has to, because Kezz's time attack was much more convincing on this very same map pack last time. So I don't know, I think Racerlight would have personally liked to have at least 1 point the buffer. He will not, however, enjoy it. It's a dead even, meaning Kezz might be favored to take it, and this time the interesting maps are not in Endurance. We've just seen them in rounds, so I guess the most difficult maps are out of the way. Nostalgia is quite a simple, flat map by Fluff.
There we go.
Just delightfully simple, like I mentioned last week, and here it's just a classic flat map. There's not much to opine on in way of special identities like on the last map, or a particular requirement to have a good flow. But I guess it emphasizes what is now most important in flat map driving. Whereas before, that was really only just one way to drive corners because of the Rammstein mandating your way through the corner. It was just about, you know, making perfect corner after perfect corner, depending on that. But this time, with the Rammstein absent, where you actually switch your turning direction and consequently, like, your exit angle determines a lot of your speed for the following corners. It determines whether you can even make them. And on this map, of course, this will be put to the test because there are a lot of 180s where the exit angle matters a lot. This particular right-hander 180 into tight left-hander into the finishing section, this is in particular where having a bad exit can really compromise your flow for the second part of the lap. Attack format, of course, well known to everyone by now. If you're not aware, there are 8 minutes to set one fastest lap. For every 1/10 of a second that the winning player is faster, the point advantage is increased by 1. If time runs out during a lap, you are not allowed to finish it, so you must strategize around the clock to leave yourself enough time to complete a full lap if you want to do something at the last second. This lap lasting about 35 seconds, we're going to see approximately 20 attempts from the drivers. Of course, consistency not the problem, only one of them needs to stick.
Exactly, so we'll see what the difference in the end will be here between Kezz and Racerlight. And like you said, pretty simple map as it comes, so maybe the differences will not be that big in the end, but we'll see here what happens.
Simple but surprisingly deep, just because of how much having the appropriate exits and maintaining the optimal racing line throughout one lap actually will impact you.
Yeah.
As abandons his timed lap attempt, unfortunately went a bit too aggressive, which means Racerlight will be the first one to set a time. I think he went a little bit too wide, which also compromises his flow here. I think he could have had a bit more exit speed coming out. Remains to be seen whether I'm correct. However, I think that's a pretty well measured exit angle, means he can make that left-hander very easily in the final 270. Of course, you want to strike a good balance between exit speed for the following lap, but also just getting to the finish line faster to end this lap. 35.585, first time from Racerlight. Heading into the second lap. As you can see, without the Rammsteins in the way, you can actually take a very aggressive line, just cutting it so close to the wall through the 270. But the problem is that it's not a completely regular 270, so you stand the risk of touching the wall at the very end. Tuning into Kezz, seeing if he's on a decent time. He is. It does set a faster checkpoint 2 and the fastest checkpoint 3 by a tenth of a second, so on pace to beat Racerlight's time. However, he has had some problems here with the left-hander, with the exit angle being a little bit too weird, meaning it's hard for him to make it. Does make it barely fastest checkpoint 5 and fastest checkpoint 6 by quite a healthy margin. That's his time. It is a 35.366, almost 2 full tenths of a second faster, but unfortunately not 2 full tenths of a second. Actually, it is. I am just completely blind. It is 2 full tenths of a second faster, which would be a 6-3 lead for him, I believe, which is already quite significant. And Racerlight does have to score an equalizing time immediately if he wants to counter in any significant way. And Racerlight now setting the fastest checkpoint 5, Racerlight fastest checkpoint 6, will match Kezz's time at the finish line. Yes, he does, by 0.05 of a second, takes the lead, 35.313. Both players setting a decent time with plenty of time left on the clock, means that the pressure is off all of them. As it stands, Racerlight would finish with a 6-5 advantage. 5 minutes and 15 seconds remaining on the clock, so just above halfway through.
And interesting to see, I think Racerlight just with enough room there, crashed into the finish a little bit before he finished there. But
crashing
set a good
into the finish might actually be a beneficial strategy. Another thing to note, Time Attack in Trackmania 2020 has the benefit of the respawn checkpoints maintaining your velocity, so you can actually try to game the lap entry speed by setting, just respawning until you get the optimal entry. However, on this map it might not be worth it, just because the first 270 can't really be you can't really take advantage of that high speed. You're just going to gain a few hundreds of a second leading up to it, but then you also have to sacrifice that speed, and if that extra speed forces you to take a bad line, well, you just haven't gotten anything. So interesting to see what the players actually make of that corner. No time improvements as it stands, with just about half the time remaining, 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Racerlight heading into yet another lap, and that's a very clean first 270. Will be the fastest checkpoint 2 by some margin, but I don't think that was the cleanest line on the exit. Again, an excess of speed can ruin your pace just as much as a lack of speed. However, the checkpoint 3 is the fastest one thus far. Checkpoint 4, however, not faster than Kezz's personal best, and he touches the wall. Too aggressive there. Couldn't keep it together. Is Kezz on a decent lap? I don't believe he is. So no time improvements for the time being, and Racerlight holds on to that 6-5 lead as things stand. Very, very satisfying level of performance from both players, but surprisingly, it is actually decently close to what Dopamine set. I believe this map was played in bounce mode, and Dopamine's fastest lap was a 35.27, so only a couple of hundreds of a second off that. Storm 35.41, so quite close between our final 4, and Kezz this time on quite a decent checkpoint 2. Checkpoint 3, the fastest one thus far, so he's on a personal best. Can he finish it and retake the lead over Racerlight? Checkpoint 4, that's a very clean line. However, he did have to sacrifice a little bit of speed for it. Checkpoint 5 is the fastest, not by much though. Will be a marginal improvement. Let's see, checkpoint 6 is the fastest one thus far, and he does secure the lead by only 0.02 of a second, 35.296. only 0.02 of a second slower than Dopamine's personal best. So clearly this map has been optimized by now. This time Kezz winning 6-5 as it stands would mean that he walks away 10 with 12-11 scoreline at the very end. Only 2.5 minutes remaining, so not a whole lot of time for people to significantly improve their times.
Racerlight looking to bounce back here.
Heading into his next flying lap. Let's see what happens. That was the fastest checkpoint 1, but unfortunately the entry speed does compromise his 270 exactly the problem. Sometimes you can severely benefit from that mechanic. There were maps in the qualifying map pool and in the earlier weeks where you really benefited from gaming exit speed in time attack. However, on this map, you just cannot take that speed through the map in any meaningful way. So it won't be of any significant benefit. Less than 2 minutes remaining on the clock. At this point, clock strategy becomes a thing. You must reserve enough time for the final 35 seconds if you wish to set another full lap before time runs out.
There goes Racerlight again.
Racerlight goes again, and Kezz sure to follow. So Racerlight's lap for a very beginning. Checkpoint 1 looks quite promising, and checkpoint 2 does as well. Not the fastest ones, but fast enough to improve on his time if he manages to take it. However, he touches the wall. Let's see whether Kezz's time is any better. Kezz actually set the fastest checkpoint 2, but I think his exit was compromised, and indeed it is. The checkpoint 3 is already a 10th of a second slower, and it will not be an improvement on this lap unless a true miracle happened. However, checkpoint 4, he actually regained a lot of speed. Checkpoint 5, only 0.04 of a second behind his personal best. Only 0.004 of a second behind. And does he improve? He does not. He was 0.005 of a second slower than his personal best. He will not improve. Only a minute left on the clock. This was his final lap. I don't think he has time to make it to the finish line. Kezz might have just been
he's done.
Ruined by the clock, and Racerlight is also on his final lap, I believe. Actually, no, I think Racerlight might have time for one additional lap. If the clock plays to his favor, he might have time to do it once again. However, does he recognize that he has time for that? He does not have time.
No, he will not get it.
Up, and that will be the conclusion of map 1 of time attack. Kezz will take the lead 6-5, meaning he leads 12-11. Not as significant of a lead as we expected, and very high level times posted by both players. I think they can both be satisfied.
Yeah, very
Kezz will
close.
therefore take a 1-point lead now.
Yeah, there you go. So Kezz grabbing away the points from Racerlight, and very close here, actually. Not that much between the two players. Let's see if anything changes on the next map here. Will be interesting to see.
And the question is, of course, whether... I said already that Racerlight was kind of hoping for a better rounds result. And to be entirely fair, I think that's just redoubled itself after seeing that he kept up well in time attack. His lead would have been preserved, I think, much better than he himself could have hoped for. The question right now really is this following map, so time attack number 2, and another chance for Kezz to just outclass him, so to say.
Yeah.
Because in endurance, I feel like it's a much more even fight.
Yeah.
That being said, Racerlight was far behind Dopamine on pace in both endurance runs, and well, Kezz didn't really have an endurance run that he finished last time, so it's hard to judge whether his pace was whether his pace actually can, you know, be on Dopamine's level and does much better than Racerlight, whether it's going to be completely even. So Kezz, of course, Fluff confirms the scores. It is 12-11, and this map is repeated in time attack, so we've already had it before. There is no mode switch. It is Nature's Wrath by Ronig, and
there you go.
It is a pretty... I suppose the map is pretty traditional as they come. That is to say, there are no special elements here, no special identities. However, it is just a matter of cleanly driving through the banked corners in particular. So there are two 270s, and you want to take them as optimally as possible, maintaining as much speed as possible. Kezz is a bit confused. He thought that this map might be shuffled around. I don't know if he's even prepared to play it in time attack, but I think he is, considering last week on the same map in the same mode he played it very well. So maybe he's just confused by not having seen what will happen.
He's looking to set a time here, just 8 minutes, so I think Kezz will hunt it.
So Interesting enough, Kezz actually has the world record here, which is 39.175. He said it, 100 of a second faster than Dopamine. That's how close the match between them was. But more importantly, 1300 of a second faster than Racerlight's personal best. So you would say that he has enough of an advantage to get that 10th of a second, which means he can potentially increase his lead to 3 points if both players match their personal bests. And if they don't, of course, then there's just everything to play for. However, first-time lap, Racerlight already has to drop it because of a very early mistake, so not much happening there. Of course, these banked corners without the Rammstein do have a new dimension to them because, well, now you can take the Rammstein. The surface previously reserved by the Rammstein can now be taken on the exit. However, this puts you at risk of just straight up touching the wall because you will reflexively tap potentially towards the wall to just adjust your position, particularly on keyboard. So it does mean a couple of unfortunate mistakes can happen. Racerlight not setting a super competitive time. 39.69 is 4/10 slower than his personal best. He did make an early mistake, so shouldn't be judged too heavily. Kezz so far with 13 fastest checkpoints, but considering Racerlight didn't really play a serious lap, that can still change. Kezz didn't finish that lap, unfortunately. Might have crashed at the very ending, so fastest checkpoints were nothing. And Racerlight is not beating those fastest checkpoints, so Kezz with the pace advantage so far, but without the finished lap, that is worth nothing. Fastest checkpoints don't bring you any points. Finishing the lap does, and Racerlight might set a faster one just by virtue of finishing. Let's see how much closer he gets to personal best. 39.432, only 1200ths of a second off his personal best, but more than 2/10 of a second, almost a quarter of a second off Kezz's personal best, so advantage should still be with Kezz if he can live up to the potential that he displayed last week. First checkpoint was not good, and no, I misread the checkpoint, so this is competitive from Kezz. We'll see, however, how the lap finishes. With 5.5 minutes on the clock, you kind of want to set your first time here just to not give your opponent too much peace of mind, to not give them any mental edge over you in terms of stability, to just keep the pressure up on them by keeping the times close. Of course, if the opponent sees that you're not setting any decent times, he also feels much more relaxed to take risks, and Kezz takes the lead by 0.005 of a second. 39.427. However, that is a quarter of a second off his personal best, so he looks to improve. Racerlight finally posts some fastest checkpoints, but it's only the first and the second. Not exactly very indicative of full lap pace. Kezz also not very competitive with his fastest checkpoint, so that lap that he had to abandon might have been close to his personal best. It might have ended this before it began, but without finishing it, we'll never know. Kezz, interestingly enough, in the second 270, he breaks the drift, so goes for the no drift exit. Racerlight now improving. 39.258 is his personal best, puts him ahead of Storm, puts him close to Dopamine and Kezz, and gives him the lead by 1/10 of a second. So Kezz now has to match, otherwise his lead will become a deficit heading into Endurance.
Ooh, that is not what Kezz wants.
That is not what Kezz wants. You think that if Kezz is favored in time attack, then Racerlight is slightly favored in Endurance. That being said, Racerlight also had an uncharacteristically terrible Endurance performance last time, deciding to risk it all for a finish which he didn't even have to risk, throwing away the chance of attending the grand final. That was what cost him his ticket, not his performance, but a split-second decision to save time where he had no need to. Kezz this time is on a bit of a faster lap, should be able to cut down the tenths at least, not significantly. 39.386 means he didn't actually change the point differential at all, so he needs to go faster yet again. He isn't living up to his personal best, and Racerlight this time holds the majority of the fastest checkpoints, so Kezz underperforming and Kezz beating his semi-final performance. It might have just been enough to make up the difference that we witnessed in the previous week. That's so close to the wall with the rare right wheel, but Kezz does make it, does engage the no drift in order to hopefully gain more speed, and again, he is competitive with Racerlight's checkpoints. That's the fastest checkpoint, 13, so he should be fastest at the very ending, and he does take the lead. 39.234 means another 6.5 for Kezz, brings him 0.06 of a second off his personal best, 0.05 of a second of Dopamine's personal best, and ahead of what Storm did, which is 39.28. 2 minutes, 50 seconds remaining. The onus is on Racerlight to change things, but he already improved. Whether he can improve again, I'm not entirely sure. The time he set, 0.25, is already an elite level time. To improve on it would require a performance we haven't seen from him yet, but still, he does hold the majority of the fastest checkpoints, so maybe there's a little bit of pace still left to be extracted. 39 seconds the lap and 2 minutes left on the clock. Again, clock strategy comes into play. Racerlight this time, fast checkpoint 4, fast checkpoint 5. Not the fastest, but quite fast indeed. Checkpoint 6 is just as fast, very risky entry, but it should be good, and it should be quite fast as well. Racerlight decides not to no drift. He does the full drift technique instead.
Interesting.
Let's see if he's rewarded for it. I don't think he is. His pace is weaker than Kezz's, and the final corner, despite having more speed, he had to take a bad line to gain that speed, meaning it was a 39.30, but not fast enough to improve. Minute and 45 left on the clock. The time for any significant improvements is right now. After this lap is finished, you only have time for one more full lap. The way things are going, which means Racerlight's chances to equalize, he can equalize by simply being faster than Kezz by any margin. His chances are waning, and Kezz, of course, if he sets a lap like his personal best, then he'll just take the chance away from him.
Wow.
Racerlight will not have time for another timed lap. He now heads into his final lap of time attack, and he has to make it count for everything. Checkpoint number 3. Quite competitive indeed, 400ths of a second off the very best, but he touches the wall with an aggressive entry, and it wasn't the fastest as well. Kezz was convincingly faster to checkpoint 4, so I don't think it was going to happen. Even if he did, he does have to settle for a personal best, and only 200ths of a second off Kezz. I think that's exactly what we saw on the last map, so the level between these two players very close, but with Kezz being in the lead, he will increase his advantage, and Kezz will lead 18-16 heading into Endurance. 2 points to lead.
Right. Well done by Kezz, I think, securing at least an advantage before we go into Endurance mode. I think it's what he needs against Racerlight, so he will restart the game here. We'll come back later.
Indeed, just to make sure he doesn't get any freezes, he did reveal to me later that it was actually a freeze, so it was technical difficulties that eliminated him from the finals. We said, of course, that there is nothing that could have been done. A restart was not feasible and should not have been done, but regardless of that, he hopes to avoid it this time just to put on an impressive performance, just to show exactly how good he could have been, because the first map of Endurance stays the same as last week. We'll be able to compare the pace.
That will
see
be
just
very interesting.
How good it is, and of course, Racerlight finds himself in a bit of a deja vu situation. This is the exact same scoreline that he had against Storm, 16-18.
Wow.
He has a few ways to win this. He can either win both entrances by any time margin to force a tiebreaker at the end. So if Racerlight were to win both entrances by any margin, even 1,000th of a second, he forces a tiebreaker, which would be best of 5 rounds on a random map. If he wins by more than 3 seconds on any map, well, then he can just win. So if he wins both and one of them is by more than 3 seconds, he just wins. And of course, if Kezz were to win this particular map, then it would become very hard to make it happen on the final one, as it would have to be, I believe, 6 to 9 seconds.
Yeah. So that will be
interesting. So we're doing things in 3-second margins at this time, and on this map, again, the sausage curbs, they don't really make a significant impact because they're on straight lines, but still, about 1/10 of a second can be gained if you're just really, really optimal and have minimal airtime through them, and of course, they can bug you. But more interesting is what Racerlight did last time.
Yeah,
there is
I just wanted to ask,
finish.
Do you think anyone will take it this time?
Racerlight jokes about it, but here's the thing. I think it's not the right choice. I think yesterday it was the wrong choice to go for that risk finish, because he was already in a position where he was the better. He kind of demonstrated in actually both maps that he was better than Storm. And if he had just won, if he had just finished regularly on that previous one, he would have still finished ahead of him. He had more than a couple of seconds, the difference. What would have happened is he would have forced a tie, or even more likely, he would have straight up won. He would have been in the finals. If he did not go for that risk finish, the chances are very high. I think going for it again can be a mistake. if you are leading by 2.5 seconds like you did last time, by 3 seconds, by 6, 4 or 5 seconds, the risk finish is unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's not that far away.
Ooh. All right.
Just a warm-up, just a warm-up.
There you go. I was bamboozled. I was spectating and you were talking away and I was like, oh, what are they doing? But still warm-up. I was really confused. All right. I'm sorry to break in there, but here we go.
It is just a warm-up, and of course if Kezz DNF'd 2 times on a row in this map, I think he would have just rage quit the game on the spot.
Yeah.
In all likelihood, but the alternate finish on this map, I really do not think that the benefits outweigh the risk. Technically, you can suggest that the power play is being like 5.5 seconds ahead and then gaining the last half a second using the risk finish. But considering that losing the risk finish loses you 10 seconds,
Yeah.
I don't think it's really
That's
worth it.
insane. Yeah, true.
Did Kezz do a little bit of a wall tap there at the beginning? I think he did, so that's 0.2 of a second. Might not amount to much, but you know, 0.2 can decide your fate later after all. This one doesn't end until 16 full laps have passed, and the interesting corner here is this banked corner. If you no drift it, it's risky as hell. If you drift it, it's risky as hell anyway, because the run up to it is so deep that you can just straight up touch the inside wall. So of course, a lot of risks to be taken with the sausage curb in that corner, and of course the fact that this is just a very high speed map in general, so the risk taking is significantly increased as opposed to maybe some other maps we've seen. Definitely a map that tests your risk-taking ability and whether you actually have the skill to make these risks pay off. And so far, there's been no significant movement between the two players. Kezz gave up 0.2 of a second in the first 3 corners, and that's basically what he stayed to. And he no drifts, and that's exactly the problem. If you no drift, you are releasing, you're giving up speed, and you can't make the corner. It fucks with your pace. Expletive, pardon me. But what happens if you drift is, well, you don't really have much control, and he auto drifts out of nowhere. Again on this map, what is the matter?
Oi, oi, oi. No way.
That's just not going to be very good. Fortunately, however, Kezz has a buffer. This means that he can afford to lose by less than 6 seconds and still be even heading into the final map, so still have a chance to win outright. So thanks to winning both time attack maps by those hundredths of a second, he has the ability to take a less than, if he loses by less than 6 seconds, he's still going to be dead even with Racerlight, which means that a victory on the final map would just be a straight up victory for him.
Exactly. Wow.
However, here's the problem. One more mistake puts you 6 seconds above.
Yeah. And then it's
and
gone.
And the odds of Racerlight messing up the risk finish again, and that's another mistake, so that's 6 seconds already. Here's the deal. I think if you just take each lap 2 to 3 tenths of a second slower, you can avoid these mistakes completely. You're going to lose about half a second if you drive the no drift really poorly, but you can kind of afford to do it. There's only 16 laps, right? If the opponent makes so much as 1 mistake, then you can afford to do it on every single lap and still be under 6 seconds. It's very, very... you just have so much breathing room. There's no real pressure for you because the margins are so high. But because Kezz makes these compound mistakes, that he now has to risk again, although he should be the one enjoying a very healthy advantage. Doppelmayne was able to use this against him in round 1 winners bracket. He had like a 6-point advantage heading out of time attack, so Doppelmayne just was a couple of seconds slower, but it didn't amount to anything because of the lead he had accumulated.
Exactly.
And points now are just, you know, he's kind of throwing them into the wind with these mistakes, and I think there is a consistent approach to that no drift. He's just not been doing it.
Yeah.
But I'm also not entirely sure that just sticking to that no drift is worth it, because the no drift again messes up your speed, and you make a mistake like this. It really isn't intended to be taken that way, and now he's almost 9 seconds in the deficit. So no matter what happens now, Racerlight is going to be in a lead, and Kezz is going to have to make it up on the final map. Not the position I think he's good enough to do that in, because his endurance performances in the past 2 matches have been abysmal.
Yeah. Very, very true. So Kezz really struggling here. Racerlight, I think, being pretty clean. I've been focused on Kezz. Don't know if you saw Racer, but
it's just there's nothing much to say about Racerlight, because it doesn't really matter how Racerlight drives, does it? When Kezz is driving like this, Racerlight, it doesn't really matter if he finesses that extra couple of hundredths of a second. Kezz makes another mistake. That's his 5th or 6th one. It's just finesse stops mattering when one player just completely throws it away. And I need to remind you, this is an endurance race with, you know, quotation marks around it. Actual endurance races like the NEC, like the NRL Endurance Cup, they can last for upwards of 90 minutes. Endurance in the Primetime Cup lasts for 10 minutes. If you can't keep it on track, if you make 6 mistakes in 10 minutes, that's basically 1 mistake per minute. That's way too high. Even if you are risking and driving, and look at this is just another terrible mistake. It just screams a lack of preparation and just a lack of seriousness on behalf of the competitor as well. Because now I need to emphasize, to win 6-0 in endurance, it's almost impossible. 15 seconds in 10 minutes is incredibly difficult to gain, especially when you consider that these players were separated by tenths of a second, hundreds of a second in time attack and in rounds.
Yeah.
To lose by more than 15 seconds, to lose by almost 20 seconds like Kezz is doing now, that is disastrous. That is a terrible endurance performance. And I'm sure Kezz is going to feel like he was cheated out of a better position if he does finish 4th in the Primetime Cup. Because at some point, he had an advantage against Dopamine in a match that could have qualified him to the finals as the hands-on favorite, facing a relatively, I say relatively, no disrespect, weaker opponent than maybe in an average Primetime Cup year.
Yeah.
But when you are this poor to one of the 3 integral disciplines of the Cup, then obviously you cannot have a higher position. And I was sympathetic once because he froze, but this to me just looks like player-induced error and not freezes. And I don't know, it's really disappointing to see this from a player that is so skillful otherwise, because you can see in the past 2 or 3 laps he made up a second and a half in pure pace, but he already gave up 20 seconds to be there, and that is just something I will reiterate. Another mistake on the sausage curb, completely uncalled for. Racerlight is able to set faster laps while staying consistent. It's not about risking. Clearly risk has nothing to do with it. It's just about, I don't even know at this point what he's lacking or why he's performing like this, because it's not like he's been underperforming elsewhere, right? Rounds crashes from Kezz have been consistent. Like, he's always been crashing basically the same amount of time since he started the Primetime Cup, and it's always been enough to win. Always been enough to be competitive against any caliber of opponent, even Dopamine or Racerlight. Time attack, he's basically had a winning record against every single player. Then the same skills that use in rounds and time attack are used in endurance. It's not that different. Be this much worse, I really don't have an explanation, and it really is unsatisfying to watch. Unsatisfying to comment, and it must be unsatisfying for the player as well.
Yeah, very true, I agree. And yeah, I don't know, Kezz being on 20 seconds here, Racerlight just cruising it out like he does, and it's a hard time for Kezz here with 11 of 16 laps done.
I'm just going to put this out here. In order for Kezz, so assuming Racerlight doesn't somehow mystically throw away 20 seconds, which, by the way, he now has such an advantage that even if he risk finishes and fails, he can try 2 more times. I'm just going to put that out there. But what this means for the match is that Racerlight has a 4-point lead heading into the final map. This means that Kezz would have to finish 9 seconds ahead in order to force a tiebreaker. Just to force a tiebreaker, he has to finish 9 seconds ahead. It just shows how great this throw was, just the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
Kezz could have been 3 seconds off the pace on any map. He could have finished ahead of Racerlight on only a single map, just went even with him and secured a victory.
Yeah.
If he won by so much as 3 seconds, it would have basically sealed it. But now, he has to win by 9, just a tiebreak, and it is Racerlight who is the odds-on favorite to just take 3rd place completely.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say, actually. He has thrown indeed, just like you said, going into this with a lead, just what he was looking for, and he couldn't hold on to it.
And now he set safe faster time than Racerlight, but again, to what avail? That's only something that matters if you're able to drive the map at a consistent level to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's not a skill he seems to have brought to this map at all. First time it was technical defects. I will agree that I'm not going to chalk it up to his fault at all, but this time, are these really freezes? Is this how somebody who's freezing looks? I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. Yesterday he mentioned freezes, today he didn't mention them. I really don't think this is technically induced, and as such, my lenience towards it is also much lower. And I think it's just really disappointing because every single PNE player in this tournament met a pretty disappointing ending. Like, it feels painful because I'm talking about a clan that I'm a member of.
Yeah,
but when you think about it realistically, Spider finished top 8. Spider didn't train for basically a single week. Didn't train at all, and he still finished top 8. If he trained, I think he could have very easily, based on the performance that he's shown, he could have been here in the Final Four competing.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Might have even been in the Grand Final.
Yeah.
Then you have Kezz. Well, I have no comment. You just see what you saw it yourself. He was the player that ran Dopamine close in round 1, had a chance to defeat Dopamine, take the cup outright. Potentially the best player in terms of just raw pace, next to Dopamine, completely equal to him, and the endurance betrays him completely after so many rounds.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Mew, of course, Mew also had a very nice tournament. The result was great, but losing to Storm, I don't think that's something he personally would have wanted. I think he himself has to feel that he might have been good enough for the Final Four too.
Yeah.
But we'll see. What is open at the front? Has Racerlight? No, Racerlight has finished, so it doesn't matter how Kezz finishes. It's well above 15 seconds, and we're talking about a 6-0 in favor of Racerlight. But I think it was less Racerlight having... He was, of course, very consistent, a very nice run. But in the end, it was really just his opponent handing it to him.
Yeah.
And... how much to be said? Racerlight now with a very healthy 4-point lead. And yeah, I think Racerlight is just the complete favorite to take this third place match. And for Kezz to complete this kind of comeback would require just the throw of a century again, which seeing 2 of them in a row.
Yeah.
Not to say it's impossible. We've seen that yesterday, but excuse me, seen that a couple of days ago, but I would really not enjoy to see that again. I really just wish for a good entrance run if Kezz can win, just to show that he could have done it with a bit more consistency on that one map.
Yeah, that would be very nice to see. It will be interesting how this unfolds, but like you said, Racerlight would take a colossal throw to throw away his 4-point lead here, so Racer looking to seal it here, and I think another third place for him. He's looking for that. I don't know how much third place he has actually taken, but... 9 seconds. 22:18. Yeah, exactly. There we go.
I take the deal with full risky Daddy one all around. Well, if that actually happens, I'm gonna drink to that. Yeah, I'm gonna drink to that if that happens. If that happens, yeah, just no comment. Interesting thing, however, is just when I think leading up to the finals about this tournament as a whole, having just seen almost all the matches, having casted so many of them as well. This Primetime Cup was just promise unfulfilled. I guess that's how I would title it. It's the first cup on a new game, and of course, most of the players just have no prior experience with it. Some of them genuinely had no prior experience. They played Trackmania 2020 for the first time in the qualifiers for the Primetime Cup.
Yeah.
So many players were absent, so the level at the very top, not as good as it was. But so many matches have started so well, they've been so close, and such a high level was displayed through maybe like 4 or 5 maps, and it's just been the 1 or 2 maps where one or both players just completely disappear that has sort of made the matches feel way more bitter than they should have. Because when you think about the absolute peak that we saw this year, it was absolutely unreal. It was unreal just how many great times were set, just how many great rounds were played, and how much of it is now recorded for later viewing, which is nice for a change. But I mean, Kezz wasn't kidding when he said full risky, because what he's doing right now is literally that.
Let's see if he can keep it up 20 rounds.
I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there. the pace he's going right now, he can do 9 seconds in 20 laps. But if that happens, that's going to be unprecedented in history of the Primetime Cup, in the history of NASCAR, in the history of anything we've ever casted.
Yeah.
That would be the most unreal way to put yourself back into a match that I've ever seen. To throw by 25 seconds and then to demolish that same opponent by 9 seconds in 20 laps on the following map. If that happens, just don't ask anyone for the whiskey and just, you know, take the bottle out, drink.
Exactly.
Drink to that.
Yeah. We'll do that, but it's interesting.
3 laps. 3 full laps have passed. That's 9/10 of a second.
Wow.
Almost 1 full second in 3 laps. At this pace, it's not good enough. If Racerlight makes one mistake in addition to this,
yeah,
it is entirely doable, as a matter of fact, because mistakes on this map are very costly.
Yeah.
If Racerlight decides to, you know, entertain us by giving him that, it is still a theoretical possibility. However, Racerlight has reeled it in, so on lap 4, no distance was created. It's about 1 second. With 20% of the map to go, he's only, I believe, about 10% of the way there, so unfortunately Kezz not on target for his mystical Daddy One all laps target. However, he's just a full second ahead of him on pace. Even last map he was catching up so well and he had a faster best lap than Racerlight did.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what could have been. We're talking about a person who could have been Primetime Cup 2021 champion.
Yeah.
Having to resort to this because of one map, mind you. It's the same map he threw the dopamine match on. Same map, costing him 2 times in a row. How unreal is that?
That's bizarre.
After 8 matches, I think this is like his 8th or 9th match in the Primetime Cup, more than any other player.
Yeah.
And it's that one map where he had the uncharacteristically poor performance. Literally one map.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
How crazy is that?
That's crazy.
But it just also shows you the value of staying in a winner bracket. Like, he had to play 9 matches and one map cost him, whereas someone like Dopamine has played, I don't know, he played 4 or 5. I think he has to play 6 matches in total to lift the trophy. Kezz, this is his, I think, 8th or 9th.
Yeah, that's insane.
So just
amount.
many more that he had to play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's just not. He is faster than Racerlight. He's got all the fastest checkpoints. He's got the faster lap. He's not opening the gap at all after these first couple of laps. So he's not actually increasing the lead by any significant margin. And although it is impressive what he's doing, Racerlight has an equally impressive performance. And it just states that if Kezz had just gone, 2 seconds slower, 3 seconds slower than Racerlight on the previous map, and then done this, he would have just won outright.
Yeah, that would have been insane.
Even if he lost both maps by less than 3 seconds, it would have been a tiebreaker. It was just inexplicable to me why one would risk so much on that 5th map when you know what the scoreline is. It's not like the players don't know the scoreline. The match admin tells you the scoreline after every map. You can base your decisions on that. You know how point scoring works. I'm not saying that's your entire basis and rationale for strategy, but
and Racerlight,
he did make a mistake.
Now,
how much?
Yeah,
but it's only 3 seconds, so he still needs to get 6 more in order to force the tie. 6 more, we're already 9 full laps in, so there's only 11 laps, and he's only a third of the way there. That's discounting the possibility that he makes a mistake or drops pace, because he's just dropped 1/10 of his lead. So it's not that easy. You can't just do that, and I think that was a wall touch from.
He bumped in the wall. Yeah, it looked like
that was a very, very minor wall touch. Was that a speed slide?
I think so. We just
Talk
saw
about
that.
Taking the piss.
Wow.
Well, he is taking the piss, but unfortunately, that's also a second of his lead gone, so it's 2 seconds now.
Yeah.
He would have to get 7 more. Truly make that, it's just 7 full seconds more. Racerlight is just catching him up like there's no tomorrow. With 9 laps to go. Actually, 8 full laps at the end of this one. I mean, he's actually speed sliding. Holy. I am impressed. It just... It boggles the mind. For someone like me, I cast a lot of Trackmania, but in terms of play, my best finish in the Primetime Cup was top 12, and I've done that, I think, 2 times right now.
Yeah.
Just the level that these players are performing at is unfathomable to me. to think that they can just, you know, fuck around on one map and then do this on the next one makes it just all the more confusing to watch just how good their level is in absolute terms.
Yeah, it's very true. I can relate to that. I've never
Kezz is
very
just,
high, but
unfortunately, Kezz is just he blundered it away. Racerlight takes the lead, and unfortunately, the fact that he set incredible first 10 laps, well, it amounts to nothing. Unfortunate. However, we can still have a close race on our hands, and he auto drifts heading into turn 1. That's the end of that, and Racerlight just
will be
Endurance
cruising.
Endurance, I guess it was Racerlight favored, but Racerlight favored is one thing. That means that maybe he gets, you know, aggregate advantage of about a point or two just on consistency and pace alone. But this just has nothing to do with the advantage. This is just, you know, one player really not showing up. Not to say that, I mean, not that I really blame him, because after all, when these mistakes start piling up, you kind of start thinking to yourself, yeah, what am I playing for? Third place? Do I really care about third place? Well, in the end, you know, even here on the stream, now that there's some attention being brought to the Primetime Cup, we don't really discuss the people that finish third or fourth, do we? Storylines are always about the winners, and unfortunately, the fact that he performed very well, although it will be preserved for history to see later, thanks to a video recording, which we are finally doing with some kind of consistency. You know, in the minds of people, it's going to be forgotten just how good he was, and that he could have had a real shot of just beating Dopamine in the cup in total. And then, you know, Endurance, the same thing, that he actually drove very well. He beat Dopamine and Endurance in round 1 of the winner's bracket, and when the time was right for him to show that Endurance skill, he just vanished. And that is unfortunately his downfall. That is why he's going to finish in 4th place. By now it is completely sealed, so he would have had to win by 9 seconds just to force a tiebreaker, and then it's again a question of consistency and pace. Which wasn't really, the pace was his in rounds, but the consistency was not, and the map would have also been randomly selected, so there's no guarantee that it would have favored him, and this is just a very anticlimactic and unfortunate conclusion to another match that was, I mean, it was again very close. It's just, it's almost like it's cursed, because this map pack produced 3 matches, which were all very close up until map 4. Very high level of play, and then map 5 and 6 it just completely fell apart.
Very true. At
this point the map pack has been reshuffled. It's just something with the drivers that just completely turns itself off in these kinds of situations, and while I can't honestly tell you what that is, it is a bit unfortunate to see that it comes down to this, because you have to think that a match that was down to the wire until the very end would be really interesting to see. Like, we saw that kind of match previously. We saw a tie this Primetime Cup after regular play. Unfortunately, one of the players then forfeited the tiebreaker. Was getting really late, and he had already admitted that he had lost, but nonetheless, it would have just been much more exciting, and the final 4 week is going to unfortunately be finishing in the same exact way that this tournament has sort of been, which is promises unfulfilled and really high level matches at the start just petering out for questionable reasons that just aren't necessary. Because after all, even if you don't really drive, you know, at the highest level of pace, just it would be nice to see these players battle it out with actual consistency, because that's also very interesting to narrate. Just the progression of your flow through you know, like a 20 lap stint or something is very interesting to see. And of course, if it was an actual endurance race that lasted for much more than 20 laps, well, then this would just be very poor to watch. And I guess there is a reason why few people play those NASCAR Endurance Cups, because they are really difficult. To just drive the same map over and over again for 90 minutes, maintain good flow and consistency, it's just... it's
that's something
so
else.
Difficult that I don't think anyone has really proven themselves to be the kind of player to do that on a regular basis.
Alright.
And with that, Racerlight reaches the finish line 10:23.75. Kezz will again be more than 15 seconds behind after being 3 seconds ahead. Unfortunately, his promise of 20 Daddy ones in a row didn't quite come true.
So we'll
That'll
not
be
pop
the end
the
of
bottle.
that.
There you go.
And Racer, after being 16 to 18 heading into endurance, scores 12 consecutive points to finish 28 to 18 and secure third place. Yet another third place, might I add, in the Primetime Cup 2021. Kezz will finish fourth. And the only match remaining for us this year is the grand final, Dopamine versus Storm on Tuesday,
Yes.
20:30 CET. Do not miss it.
Do not miss it, guys. Exactly. Upcoming Tuesday, you can watch the Primetime Cup unfold here, and I'm really looking forward to it. 20:30 CET, and yeah, looking forward to it, really. I think we saw some good matches, like you said. Unfortunate endings sometime, but I really enjoy sitting here and watching the game go by and just cast a bit with you, stream with you, and it has been very enjoyable for me. So looking forward to Tuesday. Hope everyone will be there. And I see Devil will not.
And there is something to note when you really think about it. It might seem unnecessarily harsh that I'm being unnecessarily harsh to the consistency in these matches. After all, when you look at the scoreboards of the past Primetime Cups, it's actually been roughly similar. It's just the score lines were sort of similar. But when you really look at these matches and just how close these players are in serious play, you want to see that little bit extra, and that's kind of the source of that frustration as a viewer.
Yeah.
I hope it didn't seep into the cast a bit too much, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a quality cast. I hope it kind of brought the attention it deserved to these players and to their high level of performance. That'll be it for today. However, from me, I'm signing out, and again, was a pleasure to be hosted here, and that's pretty much it.
There you go.
Have a good one, and see you on Tuesday for the grand final. Please be there. Show that the NASCAR community really just gives a ton of attention, where maybe we can try to get someone else to also host us, and
yeah, that would be nice.
Get some more extra eyes on that grand final. And of course, we're hoping for a competitive match between Dopamine and Storm. It might not seem that way on paper, but I have complete faith that Storm can just play with nothing to lose, because at this point he is one of the biggest winners of the year. He's in the PTC final. He won the SNC with Dream Team Reloaded. It's just no fear, go in there and do your very best. That's what I want to see. As far as Dopamine goes, I just want to see the same level of performance he showed against Kezz. I want to see the Primetime Cup winner be just a very good performance from him, and whoever it is, it better be decisive.
There you go.
Until next time then, thank you for having me, and
all right,
talk to you later.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.